remarkable allegations from a sitting FBI agent.
What were some of the thoughts that you had about the January 6th incident and the cases?
To me, there were some violent actions by individuals that probably warranted criminal prosecution. But then I also saw other cases where the individual was simply walking into the Capitol building with the permission of Capitol police officers. It kind of seemed to me that it was a waste of our valuable resources.
Today, FBI Special Agent Stephen Friend speaks out to Full Measure on what he feels are serious problems inside the nation's top domestic law enforcement agency and why he put his career and future at risk to call out the FBI's actions.
And I frankly felt like I'd been used as, as an apparatchik of a politically driven agency.
Tesla debuted its autopilot system almost 10 years ago.
Trouble for Tesla.
But vehicles in autopilot have racked up a troubling number of wrecks.
The car's driving itself now.
Okay.
This week, with both hands on the wheel, we navigate a shocking lack of federal laws to regulate all those gadgets in today's car cockpits.
In this world of big data, where almost every part of our lives seems to be tracked, maybe we're missing the most important measure.
Over time, is there a way to tell what has made people the happiest?
This week, a measure of happiness and why we might want to pay more attention.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. The FBI has been mired in controversy. An FBI lawyer caught doctoring documents to spy on a Donald Trump campaign supporter. Former FBI Director James Comey given a pass after being referred for criminal charges. He had allegedly mishandled documents in a campaign to smear Trump. The FBI misdirecting the public on the Hunter Biden laptop just before the election. And of course, the FBI's Russia collusion probe of Trump, ginned up by the Clinton campaign. All this time, we've heard little to nothing publicly from FBI insiders, until now. Today, we begin with a remarkable interview with a current FBI agent, Stephen Friend. He claims that things are so broken at high levels inside the nation's premier law enforcement agency that he had to blow the whistle.
Stephen Friend started his career as an FBI special agent in 2014. That's Friend with FBI Director James Comey at graduation. He says his job was without controversy until he began questioning some of the FBI's motives and practices. It began with the political kidnapping plot against Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, putting the focus on domestic terrorism weeks before the 2020 presidential election.
The FBI Detroit office opened an investigation on individuals that said they were part of a militia that was intending on kidnapping and assassinating Gretchen Whitmer. We were one of the tactical teams that assisted with the takedowns there. So we executed that warrant and drove away. I thought that I'd done good work that day. Now, in the intervening time, there was a lot came out with the trials of those individuals.
What came out was that the FBI was driving the kidnapping plot through multiple informants and undercover agents. They included the militia group leader, Dan Chappell, an FBI informant who took the lead in plotting Whitmer's kidnapping and offered up a credit card to buy bullets and supplies paid for by the FBI.
In the fallout, it appeared that the undercovers and the case agents were driving this case and driving this narrative to entrap individuals who were not disposed to commit the crimes. And I frankly felt like I'd been used as, as an apparatchik of a politically driven agency.
Friend went on to what he thought was a long-term assignment working child exploitation cases under the FBI's Jacksonville, Florida field office. But just 3 months into the assignment, he was reassigned to a higher priority, January 6th domestic terrorism cases. January 6th refers to the giant Washington, D.C. rally in 2021 with masses of Trump supporters challenging the election of President Biden.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Many protesters were peaceful and were allowed into the Capitol as police stood by. Others became violent. The FBI launched aggressive and expansive investigations. Friend says financial incentives rewarded FBI managers who built lots of cases under the heading of domestic terrorism.
So is it accurate to say the local FBI offices that brought January 6th cases probably saw financial benefit, at least the individual executives with the FBI in those offices?
Yes.
Is it accurate to say, as far as you know, there were not bonuses being given for child exploitation cases?
As far as I know, there weren't.
As you started reading up and gathering facts, what were some of the thoughts that you had about the January 6th incident and the cases?
I had sort of a mixed review. To me, there were some violent actions by individuals that probably warranted criminal prosecution. But then I also saw other cases where the individual was simply walking into the Capitol building with the permission of Capitol police officers and had told the FBI that very same fact, and on occasion there was surveillance video to support it. It kind of seemed to me that it was a waste of our valuable resources to pursue even an interview with that individual if we had them on video not committing any crime and just walking into the Capitol building, which is their right to do as an American citizen.
It's been widely reported that the FBI had undercover agents in the January 6th crowd, though they won't say how many. And with some protesters claiming they were allowed into the Capitol, Friend says it harkens back to the Governor Whitmer plot.
With the overlap of the way that those individuals were or may have been entrapped, and I saw that some of these individuals with January 6th were being allowed into the Capitol by police officers, there was certainly an element of that to me smelled a little bit like entrapment, and I didn't want to make the same mistake twice. There was that once shame on you, twice shame on me thinking that I had.
For Friend, things completely unraveled in August. That's when he says he declined to take part in what he considered unnecessary and heavy-handed FBI raids on multiple January 6th suspects in Florida.
What did you think was so wrong about the raids?
I felt that there was definitely a harder hand in the way that the arrests and the searches were going to be carried out. Regardless of the individual's involvement in January 6th, they had been interviewed. There had been open line of communication between the FBI and those individuals, but there are other mechanisms that I felt that were better. If it was using surveillance to arrest an individual when he was outside his home and identifying him on the way to work and doing an arrest there, that could be warranted.
Can you arrange someone to turn themselves in through their attorney?
Yes, it's a process called issuing a summons to somebody, and it's very common, especially in white-collar, nonviolent crimes.
For refusing to take part in the raids, Friend says he received an ultimatum, then a suspension from the FBI's Jacksonville special agent in charge, Sharyl Attkisson.
What'd she say?
She said that it appeared to her that I'd lost faith in the agency and its leadership, and that I represented a very fringe belief about the events of January 6th not needing the heavy-handedness that the FBI was treating them, and that my belief that there could be potential abuses of power, that it was incumbent on me to call out as a matter of my oath of office. She said that that was a very fringe belief, and that I needed to do some soul searching about whether or not I wanted to have a future in the FBI.
The FBI declined our interview request, but told Full Measure it investigates individuals who commit or intend to commit violence and other criminal activity that constitutes a federal crime or poses a threat to national security. We are committed to upholding the constitutional rights of all Americans and will never open an investigation based solely on First Amendment activity. Friend is still technically employed at the FBI, but suspended without pay, and hoping that putting his job on the line makes a difference.
I don't think should be lost that the FBI, our premier law enforcement agency in this country domestically, could be, in your view at least, doing things that are the antithesis of what they're supposed to be doing?
I applied to the FBI because I believe in the mission. I look at my responsibility as I want to combat bullying, and that's why I became a special agent. If the FBI becomes the bully, that doesn't change my responsibility. I need to stand up and face that down, even if it means my career. And if the FBI is willing to become a bully, then it's truly lost.
Friend is working with a nonpartisan whistleblower group, Empower Oversight. They've helped him submit formal complaints to the Inspector General, Office of Special Counsel, and Capitol Hill. Ahead on Full Measure, safety and the autopilot function. Just when you really need a backseat driver, it turns out there isn't one. With all of those cool cars now driving around pretty much on their own with an autopilot function, there have also been a number of disturbing crashes and even deaths. Now the federal government is investigating the technology. Lisa Fletcher looked into the case and tells what she found.
Tesla debuted its autopilot system almost 10 years ago, quickly making a name for itself as a leading brand in driver-assisted technology. Companies from Ford to Volkswagen adopting similar driving automations in the years since. Now, just how safely that technology performs driving tasks such as steering and accelerating a vehicle in its own lane while under driver supervision is under scrutiny. There have been 392 crashes with driver-assisted technology reported in recent years. Tesla accounted for 273 of them, or almost 70%.
Trouble for Tesla. A driver telling the Hartford Courant he was in the autopilot mode when his Tesla 2018 Model 3 collided with a police cruiser.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is examining whether autopilot technology, particularly when engaged in Teslas, provides drivers with a false sense of security. This after determining a series of accidents between the electric car and parked emergency vehicles was the result of autopilot disengaging on its own, far too late for the passenger to safely take over, less than 1 second before impact.
Technology is getting in the way.
Are people asking the right questions when it comes to
Bruce Walker, a professor at Georgia Tech University, studies human interaction with technology in unique places like cars, military cockpits, and the International Space Station.
The legacy or traditional car companies, what we like to think of as Detroit, had to have a lot of research and approvals before anything was changed in a vehicle. The pace of technological development and rolling out technologies in the car is happening too quickly for it all to be vetted and tested and approved.
Take a car's built-in phone-based entertainment system, for instance.
Come on in and have a seat. So this is the National Advanced Driving Simulations mini-sim.
Federal recommendations, not rules, suggest drivers take no more than 2-second glances at a time to complete a task, like choosing a song or checking the route on a map.
If you're traveling at speed, 50 miles per hour, for example, and you take your eyes off the road for even a second, you've traveled a long way.
A surprisingly long way. At that speed, a 2-second glance from the road means traveling 140 feet. And at 50 miles per hour, it takes 170 feet for a car to come to a complete stop. Smooth touchscreens can be far more distracting to operate than those old car radios with distinguishable knobs and preset frequency buttons designed to keep drivers focused on the road.
The car's driving itself now.
Okay.
Perhaps most shocking, no federal laws regulate driver-assisted technology. In this driving simulation, the car is in full self-driving mode and should alert the driver before independently handing control back under any circumstance. However, it quit unexpectedly, which at 50 miles an hour resulted in a simulated crash into an ambulance and the car traveling hundreds of yards before the human driver could get it fully under control.
Well, it's challenging because you don't want to stifle innovation. You want the technology to advance and as rapidly as possible in a safe way. Unfortunately, there's market pressure in trying to be the first to market or gain market share. So they will bring things to market which aren't necessarily fully completed or fully baked.
And Georgia Tech isn't the only place looking into the interface of humans and technology in vehicles. We also visited the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety while reporting for Sinclair's Spotlight on America. Here, the Institute is trying to better understand why a braking safety technology that should have applied the brakes autonomously before smashing into that dummy did not.
The dummy is set, ready for your run.
This year, Congress passed a bill requiring all new cars and trucks come equipped with an automatic emergency braking system, or AEB. However, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, the same group investigating Tesla's autopilot issue, has not established federal regulations covering how well the systems are required to work and under what conditions. We watched two trucks, same manufacturer, both model year 2022, fare very differently in the tests. At its worst, plowing into the dummy and dragging it several feet. At best, stopping just before impact.
We want to make sure that
Jessica Cicchino is the Institute's VP for Research.
we see that more than 3/4 of pedestrian fatalities occur in the dark. So it is really important, if we want to have these systems help prevent fatalities, for them to work in these situations where we see the most deaths occurring.
The Insurance Institute also found the braking systems reduced the odds of a pedestrian crash by 32% during daylight, but in unlighted areas, no difference. Until car technology carries the same weight as standards covering fuel economy and the size of a steering wheel, drivers are left to trust the system.
Trust in technology is something that is earned, and it's very easy to lose or to break trust and harder to regain it. Hopefully that can be done through testing and not sort of by seeing what bad things happen.
Any idea why, when the government sometimes seems so anxious to regulate things, it would not be regulating this new technology?
It's probably a combination of two things. So lobbyists are paid to keep regulators at bay, and government agencies are trying to stay tech neutral to encourage innovation. Now, by comparison, in the EU, all self-driving tech has to meet standards that are set by a regulating authority that actually has authority.
What does Tesla have to say about all this?
Tesla wouldn't comment, but the Alliance for Automotive Innovation that reps other companies with self-driving tech told us, quote, they support more transparency and awareness of safety performance of these systems based on real-world data.
I'm sure we'll be hearing more about all that. Thanks, Lisa. Coming up on Full Measure, how do you measure happiness? How happy do you feel today? It's more than just a polite social question. How happy or unhappy we are may be one of the most important but least noticed societal measures. We talk about that with John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup and author of Blind Spot, The Global Rise of Unhappiness and How Leaders Missed It. You've said that world leaders tend to pay close attention to other measures like gross domestic product or unemployment, but not so much to their own citizens' well-being. Why do you think that is?
I think one is because they feel like they can quantify things like how much money we make, whether or not we have jobs, or whether or not somebody was born, or whether or not they died. But they feel like these feelings are more of amorphous terms and too hard to capture, and it's not true. In fact, there are other ways that you can actually demonstrate that there's an individual and how they feel. You can ask their family and friends, and they say exactly the same thing, that they know how those individuals feel. So there is good survey validation that you can capture these feelings in a measurable way.
Why do you think it's important that leaders understand the happiness or unhappiness level of their constituents?
The reason they need to be paying attention to these things is because two of the single biggest issues that's facing humanity today are two things they're not really focused on. The first one is global loneliness. 300 million adults say they don't have a single friend or family member in their life. And it's not just the quantity of friends, it's also quality. 20% of all adults everywhere don't have anyone they can rely on in a time of need. And this loneliness issue is a massive concern for everyone. The second one is workplaces. Any estimate in terms of how many hours we spend working, one estimate is 115,000 hours in a lifetime. That's exactly the same amount as 13 straight years of a person's life. And right now, people are miserable at work. And the source of the misery is often someone's boss. But if you capture that misery and quantify it, somebody who has a bad job looks statistically, like emotionally, someone who has no work whatsoever. And that's a serious problem.
What are some of the big events, name one or two, that people missed or leaders missed because they weren't really picking up on this sense of happiness or unhappiness?
Absolutely. So one of them is the Arab uprisings. If we look back to places like Egypt and Tunisia and GDP per capita, it grew in almost a perfect linear fashion. But when we look at it in terms of how people were saying how their lives were going, both were crashing. Another place where we saw this was Brexit. Brexit! Now! In June of 2016, GDP per capita grew at about 2% in the quarter before the vote. And when we asked people about how their lives were going, we found that it was crashing. We saw one of the largest two-year declines that we've ever seen in the history of our database in the lead up to that vote. This is why leaders need to pay attention, not just to what people are doing and what they're making, but also how they're feeling voting.
Over time, is there a way to tell what has made people the happiest, or are you only looking at unhappiness?
No, we're absolutely looking at both terms, both happiness and unhappiness. One thing that is very powerful in a person's life is money. Now, money does not necessarily buy happiness, but it is very hard to be happy without it. So as long as your basic needs are met, after that, the only thing that actually gets you more happiness is things like time with family and friends. And this is why one of the issues of loneliness that we're encouraging more to pay more attention to is so big for the world today.
Interestingly, Clifton says compared to 15 years ago, a lot more people rate their lives as either a perfect 10 or a worst imaginable 0. He says social media may have impacted and magnified people's views of their own circumstances. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Here's what's coming up next week on Full Measure. We will trace the fascinating political career of a refugee from Africa who is now America's first Somali-born mayor.
I never heard of him before. And I'm like, what? Where is that? And it's like, it's kind of close to Canada. It's way up there. I said, okay, I will come and check it out. Nothing was there. And it was wintertime as well. I'm like, oh my God, it's cold.
Find out how her story intersects with Donald Trump next week on Full Measure. If you want to hear more stories, check out our podcast, Full Measure After Hours, wherever you like to listen. Until next time, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.